Um, Therefore, the multiple similarities he and his sources have observed may not have been exclusively to the customs, etc., of the one tribe of Israel, Judah, with which they would have been familiar. Rather, the analogies they would have been a discernible closeness in their traits. It would follow then that the word Israelite could justifiably be substituted for the word Jewish in the writings. Either way, however, whether the human characteristics depicted are attributed to the tribe of Judah or to the entire 12 tribes, the likeness to inhabitants of the new world is unmistakable. And you got a couple of scriptures here.
Bring out the scripture.
Job 8:8-10.
You got that next up. And what's the other one?
Revelations 12 and 15 to 16.
You got that second one? Revelation 12, 15 to 16. Go ahead,
All right.
brother.
Job chapter 8, verse 8. It says, "For inquire, I pray thee of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers."
Right, so that's basically what Israel today is not doing, because the majority of Israel don't know who the Most High is. They don't know that they're Israelites. That's why it says to inquire, I pray thee of the former age, to the search of their fathers. Why? Because if you go back into the history and you find out that you're an Israelite, and you go back into the history, you find out about the history of our forefathers and the great things that they did, and then you would know, based off of experiences that you've dealt with and certain ways that different tribes carry themselves, that look, we're Israelites. Go ahead.
Right. It says, "For we are but of yesterday, and know nothing, because our days upon earth are as a shadow."
Right, that's why the majority of our people today don't know who they are. It wasn't until probably the 1960s, really that Israel started waking back up. I mean, you had other groups going back to the 1800s into the 1900s that knew that Judah was so-called, the Jews, the so-called Negroes, the Jews, but that was the extent of it. They couldn't go any further than that. Why? Because it wasn't time. But then when you go up in the history, then you found the different tribes found out who they were by righteous men of the Lord, that the Lord put his Holy Spirit upon to break down these things. Go ahead.
Right, Kun. It says, "Shall not they teach thee and tell thee and utter words out of their heart?"
Right. Shall not they teach thee and tell thee and utter words out of their heart? That's why when you brothers out there that wake up, you brothers and sisters out there that wake up, you start to see certain things that Israel did back then that are similar to the things that brothers do today. And you see the similarities between them. That's why them Spaniards and this guy Kingsborough was able to make a discernment of who the Israelites were.
Quick precept. This is the book of Romans chapter 2, verse 14. It says, "For when the Gentiles, which are the Israelite foreigners, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law."
Now, why they say that they didn't have the law? Because at that time they were separated from the Commonwealth of Israel. Right. They were following the customs of the Gentiles, so their circumcision became uncircumcision. So they didn't have the laws at that time. Go ahead.
It says, "Which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law."
Right, because there's certain things that Israelites do today that are similar to the things that Israelites do in the scriptures. I'll give you an example. The tribe of Benjamin, the so-called Jamaicans or West Indians. I just speak about the so-called Jamaicans because I grew up around those Benjamites, and they would tell me there was certain things that they wouldn't do. Like, for instance, if a woman was on a period, they're not gonna pop that woman. I'm not saying all of them, but some of them they still, for the most part, they still uphold that. Now, where did they get that from? They get it from the scriptures. They get it from the spirit. So you're not supposed to deal with a woman when she's on a menstrual, And there's other certain things that other tribes do also.
Right, like Reuben and Gad. They did certain ceremonial customs that went back to Israel. They used to do the Shema Yesha'Allah prayer, which that was in the scriptures going back to Israel. They used to wear the fringes, right, with the borders of blue, right, and that went back to Israel. All right, and there's a whole bunch of other things they did.
You have something to say, brother? I got stuff. Finish up.
Okay. It says, "When they do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts. their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another.
Why? Because they already had certain laws when you go back into the history that was already embedded in their mind. In other words, there were certain things that they remember because what? We all reincarnated. So there's certain things you remember that you won't do. And if you do certain things, you feel bad, and after a while, you won't do them because this ain't right.
Right, your spirit.
Yeah, your spirit convicts you. You say, no, this ain't right. We're not supposed to be doing this shit. This ain't right. You have something else to suck around?
Romans chapter 7, verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin.
Right, so we know the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. And what happened was, there's another scripture that says that the Gentiles, which is the Israelite foreigners, they're past feeling. In other words, that fear that they have for the Lord, and the thing, and that thing that stopped them from committing iniquities, it was far gone by that time. You know, they were past feeling. In other words, there was no restraint, there was no conscience. No boundaries to them, so they just went further ahead, and that's further proof that they're Israelites. All right, that was it on that, brother, and that was it on Job, right? All right, read that.
Revelation chapter 12, verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth.
Right, so basically it says that the dragon cast out of his mouth a flood. The reason why we don't know that we're Israelites today is because the so-called white man, when he came into power, they hid those records. And then if you know anything about when them Spaniards came over here to this side of the world, a lot of those records that the Incas and the Mayas and all them other tribes had that kept records, they burnt them, because when they read them, they was like came to the conclusion, now we can't let this stuff get out. If we let this stuff get out, people will know that these people here are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So what they did was they burnt those records, but there were certain ones of them that still remain, and then there were certain historians, and you know, because you had among those Europeans, you had certain historians that their whole thing was just to document whatever they saw here. And although they might have, in the back of their mind, they might have been like, well, nah, I can't write this down, but the Spirit compelled them to do it. And they wrote it down. And all those records existed. So this guy, Kingsborough, which was an English scholar, he went around all of Europe, and he gathered all those records together and made one big volume, and he gave the certain descriptions of every example that was given by these Europeans of how these people over here that the Europeans call Indians, the Edomites call Indians, or Israelites. Okay? So read on, brother.
Israelites in the New World. The celebrated Las Casas entertained no doubt that the continent of America had in early ages been colonized by the Jews. And he goes so far as to say that the language of the island of Saint Domingo or Santo Domingo was corrupt Hebrew.
See, it was corrupt Hebrew. And that's why, which we're going to get, you know, later on, that's why Columbus, when he came to the New World, he knew exactly where he was going. He was trying to get to India. Get the fuck out of here, man. That was bullshit. He knew exactly where he was going. That's why he quoted Esdras. You know, he knew exactly where he was going. That's why he brought Hebrew interpreters with him, because he knew that once he got here, the people that were here were speaking Hebrew. But they didn't understand that they were speaking a corrupt Hebrew. So, all right, bring it out.
2 Kings 17 and 22 to 24, and 2 Esdras 13 and 39 to 46.
All right, so read that.
2 Kings chapter 17, verse 22. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets.
Right, so how did the Lord remove Israel out of his sight? He kicked them out of the land of Israel, mainly Samaria and other lands in that region. But the main place that they kicked them out of was Samaria. Go ahead.
So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day.
Right, so they were carried away unto Assyria unto this day. That was the captivity of the 10 tribes. That's after the kingdom was split. Go ahead.
And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwellings there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the power of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the power of the land.
Right, so that basically, when they were brought into the land, they didn't know the customs, they didn't know the laws, so the Lord sent lions to destroy them. And then when they complained to the king of Assyria, what the king of Assyria did was he sent back a Levite priest, and that Levite priest taught them the manner and customs and laws of Israel. But they still didn't worship the Most High perfectly, because it says, as you read on down, that they did those things, but they still continued to worship their gods, their false gods. So the point to bring back from that was that the land of Israel, or Samaria at that time, all different types of heathens were brought into there. So-called Ethiopians and all them other nations, Arab nations, were all brought into that land. That's why even to this very day, the land is divided into many different nations, because that set it up for the prophecy that Yahushua said, that Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be come in. All right, so that was it on that, right, brother? So read on.
2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verse 39. And whereas thou sawest that he gathered together, another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king.
Right, so Hosea was the king of Israel at that time, and through him, he was a wicked king, and the Most High set up the Assyrians through Shalmaneser, King Shalmaneser, to destroy him, and King Hosea tried to make a league with the king at that time, with the king of Egypt, and the king of Egypt couldn't help you, because the Most High had already blessed the Assyrians to be the rulers, the next rulers in line. So that's why they weren't able to help you, because the Most High was with the Assyrians at the time to take Israel down, because they disobeyed the law, statutes, and commandments of the Lord. Go ahead.
Whom Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters. And so came they into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
So that other land that they were taken to was the land of Assyria. And from that land, they took a counsel. You brothers know the history. The brothers have been following along. They took counsel among themselves to leave that land and to go to a further country where never mankind dwelt. And everybody knows that, well, not everybody, but the people that are in the know that land, that further land that was never inhabited by man, was the so-called Americas, because this place was only set up for the Phoenicians and the Zidonians and them to come over to this side of the world and take goodly things from here, trees and exotic animals and fruits, and bring them back forth to King Solomon. But they didn't dwell here. They might have stayed here for a few nights or a month or 2 months or 3 months or 4 months or however long they stayed here to gather the stuff that they had got, and they might have left they left relics of themselves, but they never set up a colony here, and it wasn't set up. A colony wasn't set up here until the 10 tribes came over to this side of the world.
42nd verse, that they might dare keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over.
Right, so the Most High held back all the typhoons and storms in the oceans, and the currents and everything, and that was detrimental for navigating in ships and being on the ships to come over to the side of the world so they can make it over here safely. Yeah, point.
And I was gonna say, and the Lord had the chariots helping guiding them over here, because that was prophecy, and there's documents on that too. And then even just like Christopher Columbus, and when they came over here, he had the Moorish navigators which were Jake's, but also too, the Lord sent a chariot that showed them how to get here. That's what they call it, Saint Elmo's fire. All right, so